Hey everyone, just want to let you know we had a little technical difficulty on audio for the first about 20 minutes. So you're going to be hearing the audio from the camera and not the good stuff. But if you stick around for 20 minutes, about the second 2/3 are going to be great. So thank you. Bye.
Welcome to the Big Silence Podcast. This is not your host, Karena Dawn. So today's episode is going to be really fun. Your actual host today, who has been missing in the intros for the past 5+ episodes, decided he wanted to host today and do a AMA. What?
Well, that's not exactly how it went down.
Okay.
I've been on a sabbatical from intros, for sure. But, I was last minute, called in off the bench. Feel a little cold, but you know what? I'm going to try to stretch, not pull a muscle, and see what happens.
All right, y'all. So, This is your host, Bobby Goldstein. Are you nervous? Because literally, he kept delaying today because he was working. Whoa, Tiki.
Oh, Tiki. My questions, Tiki. Oh, my God.
The palm is on the table because Bobby needs her comfort.
Oh, my God.
And she just went on his computer and deleted all his questions.
This is going to be a cute close-up, though.
You have to go to YouTube because you can see what's happening right now. Tiki just sat in front of my main camera.
Tiki. Love it.
Tiki, that's my camera. Yeah, show the hiney. Okay.
I believe you were asking me a question.
Oh, yeah. I was saying you were so nervous that you kept delaying recording the podcast because you were so focused on what to ask me. We also asked the community. No one pushed sweat yet.
Yeah, not yet. Let's see at the end. And this is fake suede.
Okay. Well, I brought you a gift.
Really?
All CBD.
Oh, wow.
You might want to take a little...
Swig it?
Take the whole tincture.
Oh, boy.
CBD
all right.
always helps me with my anxiety, my nerves. All right, well, I'm going to end my non-hosting duties here and enjoy the episode, which I have no clue what he's asking me.
That's right.
Enjoy.
Thank you. Well, Karena Dawn, look at you here. Look at you. Just look at you. Looking good, might I add.
Thank you, because I was just sick for 3 days.
I know, I hear it. And then I was catching a little of your bug. The old family Thanksgiving bug. Isn't it great? Well, I want to introduce you first to my co-host. Tiki Goldstein. I hate when they put Tiki Dawn at the vet. Ugh. She's such a little cutie. Well, miss, we were just saying, episode 39. A lot can happen in a year.
Are you 39?
No, I'm not.
Oh.
How many years have we been married? There we go. Let's get into the podcast. So, my guest today is Miss Karena Dawn. Oh, there we go. Miss Karena Dawn. She is a New York Times best-selling author, co-founder of the lead women's health and wellness company, Tone It Up, mom to 5 Pomeranians, mom to 1 cat, Kiko, poor Kiko.
Yeah, I always forget him. I mean, I don't. I love him, but I always forget I'm always like mom of 5 Poms.
Yeah.
I'm also a cat mom.
I know. Well, let's get right into it. So, I was just thinking as well that everybody knows you. Everybody knows your story at this point. And if they haven't, they should definitely read The Big Silence. But over a year ago now, your mom did pass away. And why don't you first just kind of let us know where you're at today and what the process has felt like over the last year.
Well, let's start off light.
Yeah, let's go right into it.
So the process of grief is, I believe, what the question is. And the process of grief, and then, Emily, I'm going to need a napkin. I'm going to try not to cry through this, but the process of grief and the process of trauma. 1+ years later, and her photo and her setup in my office in the house is still there, and I walk by it every day. And my mom wanted her ashes here on our property, and I go by it. Where am I today? I'm not healed yet. I still don't know who I am after her. Even Bobby, this is supposed to be fun. But that's the beauty of grief and working through trauma, is that there is no timeline. And I don't talk about it a lot anymore. I hold it inside.
Is that the best thing to do?
No.
So let's
But it's
talk.
like, no, but it's not that I hold it all inside. I think about it often, but I don't talk about it all the time anymore, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's like, people are like, okay, it happened over a year ago. But I have friends and colleagues and people I know that are like, my parent passed away 6 years ago, and I still grieve. But I think that's a natural course, and it has to be accepted. And I was actually randomly just thinking, like an hour ago, I was thinking about my mom and staring out the window, went to the bathroom, and there, I always pass her photo. And I paused, and I was just thinking of her. And I was thinking, do I miss her? And then I was like, no. I don't miss I miss her as the soul that she was, but I don't miss what and me as a child, and what we were going through, and the stress on our life and our marriage and my mental health of having her here. So there's like, this whole big, mom's gone, something is released. The trauma then has to get out of the cells of your body. But I will say, I thought it would be like, give yourself 3 months. Here I am. But it's not that easy. I feel a lot of guilt.
Guilt. How so?
That I didn't do enough. And then I'm like, Karena, you did so much. So why am I holding guilt?
And interestingly enough, your mom had a lot of regret or holding guilt at the end of her life.
Yeah.
Well, it's a process. And I think if I've heard anything from the Big Silence podcast, everything's a work in progress. And that's where you're at.
I need a powder
Really?
break. But yeah, no, where I am a year later, I'm so proud of where the Big Silence has gone, and it wasn't, memory and dedication to her in her life that she suffered, and but I know after 30 years of trauma, there's healing. But also the Big Silence and writing the book and everything was part of that process for me, and then for others to know that they're not alone. And so I'm actually, doing really good.
Well, maybe it's a nice takeaway for, no matter how much time passes, to check in with people.
Yeah.
Continue checking in.
Yeah.
And you never know how they're feeling. But what made me think about your mom as well is obviously there's been a lot of kind of death lately. And we had a neighbor who had a strikingly similar story to your mom, and was recluse and a hoarder and disconnected from society since the early 90s from a traumatic event, and openly talked with us about his mental health and his struggles, and he recently passed away, and can't help but kind of think about your mom more.
Yeah, so I'm going to say his name, Sandy, because we befriended him as a neighbor. He lived up the hill, and, it was this serendipitous meeting of Sandy at the exact time he needed someone. And we were able to become his friends when he was alone for so long. And I understand that because my mom lived a solo life and alone. And we had plans with Sandy, hanging out, hearing stories of the neighborhood since the 70s. And then Sandy ended up in hospice. And yeah, that's kind of one of those trigger things too. But I'm so grateful because I was with my mom in hospice the last 3 days, and we were with Sandy.
Yeah.
And able to make sure that he wasn't alone. That was his only wish. He's like, I don't want to do this alone. And he also did want to share his story.
Yeah, I think that would be great for a future episode. I know there's a lot to talk about there. But I do feel like he felt seen at the end, and he felt comforted, just with being there. So that kind of brings me back to something of a theme that I was thinking for this podcast. And when people are struggling and going through things, of really like, how do we show up for them? And I'll tell you where I was starting to think about this. I'm thinking about you as a kid and skipping school, doing drugs, partying, failing your classes. Kind of from the outside, someone would say, well, this person's fucking up, they're acting out. But there's never really a question of why. Continuing the question of why are they acting that way? Mm-hmm. Now let's continue that. How do we help that person? So instead of just identifying it, this is the big silence. Let's figure out ways of like, if I'm looking at Karena as a kid, how would you talk to a young Karena and help them in that case?
I think young Karena, what she needed was to not be ridiculed, judged, told she was doing everything wrong, and she needed to be a certain way through friends, superiors, and instead say, how are you? How are you doing? Instead of...
Can you give examples of how people would tell you you're doing wrong or tell you how to do things?
I had a lot of people run away from me. A lot of friends. I lost a lot of friends because I was spiraling, and they kind of saw things happening in my house, but none of their parents came to check on what was happening.
What do you mean by spiraling?
What you just said, like the drugs, the parties, the skipping school, the escapism. And, I think if I saw my child or my friend's friend as a young kid and hearing little things that were going on, or what was happening at home, or your mom's hospitalized, your mom's missing, maybe stepping in to check in a little bit more.
So how would you check in on a young girl who is clearly acting out and you don't know the story?
And that's the thing, like acting out always comes from something. So remember, if your child is acting out, there is a reason.
Mm-hmm. In my notes, I had, maybe it's not acting out, maybe it's reacting out. There's always something there. Well, I like to just put that.
I was definitely reacting out.
I would say so.
Checking in with the family, checking in with the kid, checking in with, so say you see something in your kid's friend, checking in with the kid who hangs out with the friend. Like, hey, how is Susie? Is anything different about her? oh, I don't know, and then maybe talking to Susie's parents. Just opening up conversation, and that's where, because you don't want Susie to feel alone and then isolated.
I get it, but if I'm knowing you now, I didn't know you when you were a kid, but I can only imagine how stubborn you were.
I was defiant. I was a little biatch.
So if I went to...
Because I can be a little...
Yeah, teenage Karena, and I say, hey, just checking in, how are you doing? I'm pretty certain I'm not going to get...
I'd be like, fuck you, leave me alone.
Yeah, probably something along those lines.
Yeah, I actually did go to therapy. My dad, he's a therapist, so he made me go to a therapist who was his friend.
Okay.
Dad, I know you're going to listen to this, but I remember that time when I sat on this therapist's couch. He's like, Karena, you have a dark cloud over your head. I'm like, fuck you. Thank you for telling me
I
that.
think that's an appropriate response to that.
I know. But this is, again, back then when we're not talking really about mental health. There's therapists and there's that work being done, but you're still tiptoeing over in the 90s of what actual mental health is and why you're going to therapy. And my dad was having me sit with this guy telling me I have a dark cloud. And I'm like, okay, fix it.
So I kind of want
I sat there silent.
I want to stick to this, though.
Okay.
So knowing your personality at that time, knowing what you know today, do you think there is anything that anyone could have said to you? Did you meet anyone that started to, like, maybe flash a light that showed a glimmer of hope?
Someone could have given me a hug. I could have told me that I was loved. And not just my dad going through his own chaos. Someone could have told me that I mattered. That I'm worthy to be here. Like a mentor or something. But
Was there anyone that, even for a brief moment in time, had that position that you looked up to, that you kind of kept in the back of your head as you were on your journey?
first of all, I'm just glad that he's blocking my main camera right now because I have the ugly cry face.
As she goes in focus and out of focus, you'll blur in, blur out.
Give me that blur.
I'll mess it up.
Yeah.
I had a teacher, Miss Terry, at school 70, and I would just go sit. I'd skip class even in like elementary school. She would let me just like sit and talk to her. And an art teacher at Bradford High School. I don't remember his name right now, but he would let me. He knew what was going on at home, and I just wanted to paint. And painting was like my therapy. So I'd get letters from him to like skip my science class or my math class because I had to finish painting. And he would let me go in the front of my high school, sit by a tree, and just paint. Those two people stand out as teachers in my school. My school had me go to the high school social worker, and I was like, not talking to you. There wasn't like a connection there. It was very like by the books, but no, I felt like there was no empathy. So those two teachers stand out to me. That's it.
Okay.
But they couldn't hug me.
Not in the 90s. I don't.
Even today.
So you still continued on the path. You had two somewhat examples that stand out to you that at the time it made you feel seen. It made you feel good. But now with the big silence and a goal of really helping these young Karenas that are out there, boys or girls, and how can you talk to them to know that it's not only those two teachers, that there's a bigger resource out there, that there's more people out there.
So how can the big silence help the young Karenas out there?
Well, that's our mission. Our mission is to, and my why of what I wanted to start the Big Silence Foundation was to reach the little Karenas, to make sure that our youth do not have to suffer in silence anymore like I did. And I am a suicide survivor, and I am so proud to be here today and be able to share this mission of mental health and have the Big Silence here and to speak to you and to our children and to our future generation and let you know that you're not alone and you can speak up. You can come to us at the Big Silence, our crisis text line. You can go to your teachers. You can go to your parents or peer, anybody that you trust and say, I need help. Like Mrs. Terry, I would have gone to her if I had known that, that I could speak about what was going on at my home.
Right. But most likely that 10, 13, 14, 15-year-old Karena is not listening to this podcast right now.
No, but her parents are.
Okay. So how can I'm like exploring.
Yeah.
I'm not asking for an answer. I'm not driving for an answer that you already know. I'm like, how does it get there to go from just your powerful story, which is amazing. It's incredible. There was like a Joe Rogan quote that popped up online that I saw the other day, where it was like that he loves a success story, but like more so than loving a success story, he likes someone who fucked up their entire life and then turned it into a success story.
That's me.
Yeah, it is. But that's not enough.
Yeah.
Like it's the continuation of like, well, no one just goes and says, life's great, let me fuck it up. Like there's that reaction we were talking about earlier. And then it's like, how do you get through to that? And so that young Karena who's not listening, like how can the Big Silence show up, whether it's at the schools or show up for those parents to figure out how they can be a Miss Terry versus a therapist saying a dark cloud over their head?
We raise our voices. We speak more. We make more noise. We have our parents and everyone listening here checking in with their kids, even if they're smiling, truly check in and teach them, educate them on mental health so that they know the signs. They know the signs of, oh, maybe I'm suffering from depression. Maybe I'm having anxiety. Like we need to actually educate our kids more in the schools of mental health because and bullying and what bullying causes in the mental health. And it's truly educating. I think there should be a program in every school that we talk to our kids about it and normalize it because there's no reason that any child should be taking their life.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
But they're alone. They feel alone. But we need to open up that conversation more and more. And there's a lot of foundations that do that. And we're another one that's doing it and focusing on the youth because it's on a rise. Suicide rates with kids and adults, but anxiety, depression. But the more we talk about it, and even it took me many years because I was ashamed to talk about my past. I was ashamed to talk about my mother. I was ashamed to say I tried to take my own life. But now I'm like, it's been such a healing process to just talk about it. And it's healed me, and I know that it can heal millions more. And I'm not ashamed of it anymore. So if anyone's listening, if you're a parent and you're ashamed of your kid because they've been diagnosed with some sort of personality disorder or mental illness and you want to hide it, don't be ashamed because you're going to find another parent that's going through the same thing. And you're going to come together and you're going to take care of your kids and be each other's support system. And then your kids are going to be okay.
So now going back to you're talking about shame when you're young. So you have kind of two scenarios. You have yourself dealing with a problem of your mom is schizophrenic. So essentially you're losing your mom at a very young age, disappearing. And That's one thing, but then you feel shame to talk about it with anybody else. Like your mom's mental illness is one thing, but it's the way you feel that directed your life. You understand? Like, so if you didn't have an outlet to talk about it, well, like that's what's causing your life to go in a certain direction. That's what's causing you to feel alone. That's what's causing you to do drugs. That's what's causing you to do. Now there's something at home that you're reacting to.
So situational, I always call it like situational depression or situational reaction.
Sure.
Yeah. So my mom's mental illness was her illness, and I was not able at such a young age, as my brain is developing and still is, to understand her perspective. I didn't understand it. And I was incapable at that time to understand it. And I will still never know exactly what her thoughts were, how her brain was working. I have I have all of her journals and everything and that she left me, and I understand a bit more. But yeah, so she had her struggles going on. And then she was and she told me in the last few years of her life that she thought we were all sitting at home having dinner every night. And she didn't understand that I went through anything, or that my father, or that Rachel, because she was so lost in over there in her mind that she literally thought we were having a little Brady Bunch family at home every night. And so what happened with her and her abandonment, her illness, then made me fall off the deep end. It's a domino effect when it comes to mental illness. It affects everyone around you. It's not just the person in it, it's the family members, and then the friends, the spouses, that it affects everyone. So I bet if 1 in 5 people have a mental illness, are affected by it, then everyone you know knows someone and is somehow affected by mental illness. So the more we talk about it, the more we come together, the more we can heal together. So thinking of it as going back to little Karena, mom's at home or not at home, sick, and I go to school and I have all these other friends. Think about the friends that were escaping with me. They were probably also escaping from something else, but we didn't talk about it because it didn't have a name. It wasn't talked about. But I always think back, like, what about her at the rave? She was as fucked up as me. Like, what was she going through?
Yeah. I think TV shows in general, I think conversations are deeper. So I think people writing shows are having deeper conversations. Like, what was the show we watched? Euphoria. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, but that explores a darker area of children's lives and what people are going through. I mean, look at even older films. Look at like The Breakfast Club, right? I mean, that explores, hey, okay, you think one thing, you're a certain character according to everybody else's, play in their head. But like when it comes down to it, let's explore what's beyond that. So I do think there's like a general shift. But I also think...
and then Euphoria got so much shit for being Euphoria and exposing and saying it was like...
glorifying something. I mean, who's to be the judge? I mean, look at the conversation around it. I don't know the outcome. I'm just saying there's more of a conversation around it.
Can I say something I've never said before?
No.
No, I was just thinking, and I'm like, no judgment. I love Euphoria. I don't think it's glorifying. I think it's important to get the message out there. But I remember growing up and my parents were watching a TV show about a girl who was bulimic. And I didn't know what bulimia was. But guess what I did after I watched that show?
Interesting.
Yeah. But it's, and again, this is not meant to be like anything's good or bad. But I think, again, it goes back to educating our youth. because I was educated by that TV show versus, oh yeah, this is what happens. This is our body image. I didn't know what a bulimia was or anorexia, or nobody was teaching you about body image, no one, mental health, anything. So that's why I think it's so important. Euphoria is great, but let's talk about it to the youth before they watch the show. So they're like, oh yeah, I know what's going on here. I understand it. I can process it. It's not, I'm going to go take some acid or meth or anything like that.
Yeah. If I did have a question, I would probably go to you about that stuff, though.
I'm going to get cut off of the podcast world after this convo.
Cancel Karena.
Cancel.
Can we say that? Is that bad?
Yeah, you can.
I
What?
mean, I don't know. I don't want to get canceled on my first podcast here.
Cancel Bobby.
Bye. That's
kidding.
good. I'll go back to my palm dungeon.
I think they're going to want Bobby to host more.
I think, I mean, maybe I'm just being self-critical, but I think we're a little all over the place. I think we've been a little ADD, or at least me.
You're doing great.
Thanks, Car. But back to you. I still think there's something that, like, really who Karena was. Like, how could you really get through? You could say, oh, I want to talk to people. I mean, you have programs at school. Oh, don't do drugs back in the day, right?
That was a joke.
They weren't intending it to be a joke.
I was like,
okay.
What? Oh, okay. That was just my opinion.
But how could you really talk to kids today if you don't talk how a kid is talking? Like if a kid is playing Roblox, like you got to talk that conversation to get their attention. If they're a little older and they're doing drugs, maybe you do have to talk about drugs. Maybe you do have to connect over drugs in a way, not to glorify it, but to be able to relate, because at a different age, you're living a different life.
Well, I think, first of all, if you're speaking in schools, you have to look at your broad audience, not just speaking to the kids that are going through it. You have to also make everyone's going to be uncomfortable, right? In a classroom. And you have to speak to the kids that are like, I have a great life, like, because there is a lot of that too. And then you have to speak to the kids who are struggling and make everyone feel like they're one, they're a union. We're human race. We're all in it together. And so when you speak to the children, not leaving anyone out. So there's a way to do that. And I can do a separate podcast on that. But you want to make everyone feel seen. Mm-hmm. From someone who's going through something and someone who's not, but then making sure that the someone who's going through something doesn't feel intimidated, and that someone who's not going through something is like, I have empathy. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing that's important to teach, because a lot of kids, when I was growing up, if I was to explain what was going on at home, they'd run the other way. But instead, we need to educate empathy as well.
Processing.
Mm-hmm.
Processing. I think if anything, I'm learning like, well, no one's figured it out because everybody's still going through things. You know, kids are still acting, reacting, whatever it is. They're always going to fuck up. Everybody's going to fuck up. But I think there's something there where like there's a real opportunity for the big silence specifically, because you are so authentic in the space, where I think even though you are a different generation, you could talk to a 12-year-old who's fucking up, right? Acting out, because you did it. Like, you really can relate. So personally, this is a nudge, nudge. I think you need to be at those schools. You need to talk directly. I think it's effective for you to also talk to parents and give your perspective, especially as coming on the other side of all of it. But like, you need to talk. And maybe it is a little mix of euphoria, and maybe you're going to have to go on Roblox. I have no idea.
Oh gosh, I'm going to Jeremy, if you're listening, you send
Yeah.
Sao over?
Oh my God.
No, but it's true. And that's why in 2023 with the Big Silence Foundation, we are going to the schools. We're going to reach out and help those in the deserts, the mental health deserts that don't have resources. And that's where when we go back to the why the Big Silence was started, was because of me growing up, and I don't want any teenager to suffer again. And there's several foundations that we partner with, like Inspiring Children with Jewel, that are helping the children, our next generation. So we're doing the work, and more people need to be out there doing the work, because it's not easy. I mean, with us, this small little team, and our resources to be able to do the work is not enough. But we're doing it, and I'm proud of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm proud of little Karena.
Me too.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
What about some community questions?
Oh, shoot.
Lighten this shit up a little.
Well, actually, this got a little sidetracked because my questions were like specifically in one area, and then it just went all over the place.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
We'll let you be a guest host again. Save those questions. Your armpits are not sweaty. You're doing good.
Okay. All right. Well, let me just hit it. I was delivered these questions over here from Emily. Apparently, people wrote in.
Yes, on
Carrier pigeon sent these here. Very nice. Wow. Let's start with this one. I haven't really heard this term before, but why not? So I guess it's from my perspective since I'm hosting.
Okay.
What are my icks that bug you?
Well, actually, I did the AMA on my Instagram account to ask me.
But weren't you saying Bobby is hosting, ask?
What do you want to know about me?
Like ask the questions that I would ask.
So my icks about Bobby are he leaves his dirty laundry scattered throughout the house.
Really? Wait. Okay, because
especially his panties.
There's another question on here.
Especially his dirty panties. And then Tiki takes them and chews on them and then attacks me when I try to pick them up.
Okay. Maybe he's reacting to something. I don't know. But also this was actually, there's another question on here that this could link up with. Another question said, what if you have a boyfriend that's messy and doesn't listen?
Boyfriend? How long have you been dating?
I don't know. Let's just say 3 years.
A boyfriend? You're not married yet? Just kidding. I'm kidding.
The judgment. The judgment.
Okay, let's say a boyfriend and it's like a weekend and he doesn't listen to you and he's messy. Bah. Now.
Wait, what?
If you're a week in dating someone and he doesn't listen to you and he's messy.
Okay, next question here.
I'm not a relationship expert.
Well, let's get into another relationship question. Why don't we?
Okay.
Let's see. Talking about compromise in relationships.
Can I go back to the panty thing?
It said messy. It didn't say panties.
Dirty laundry on the floor. I will say, as a married woman now, I have practiced acceptance. And I pick up Bobby's dirty clothes piles from around the house or in the driveway.
Thanks, Emily. I don't know how those undies got there, but thank you. Hopefully they were some of my nicer undies.
Kirkland.
My party panties. Oh, they were Kirkland? Nice. Very nice.
I just deal with it. All right, so back to this new question.
Oh, shoot. Oh, wow. This one comes in hot from Katrina Scott.
Oh.
This one says short or long hair Barbie?
Long hair Barbie. Remember when because when we first started dating, you had really long hair and then you just out of nowhere one day, like buzz cut it. And I came home and I was like, you look like a teenager and it's creeping me out.
Okay.
So long haired Barbie.
Okay. I was
You're-
actually thinking about cutting my hair off again. All right. Well, I might be with that messy boyfriend out on the streets. Another one from Katrina Scott. Each of y'all's, she's feeling that Texas vibe there. Each of y'all's celebrity hall passes.
Lewis Hamilton.
Wow.
We already knew that.
Yeah, you go, girl.
I know yours.
Lewis Hamilton.
Rihanna.
No, I know. I'm kidding. I think he dated Rihanna at some point,
So maybe there's a way we can have a foursome.
but there would only be. Oh, you mean with Rihanna too?
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Sorry, Dad.
But
We're just kidding here. But I mean,
next question, canceled again. Let's see. Give me your favorite memory with that old chap, Bobby.
you? Well, the first time I fell in love with you was
No, it was a favorite memory. It doesn't have to be the first time you fell in love with me.
it's my favorite memory.
Oh, okay. So I'm just saying, oh, that was favorite memory. Okay.
Prom night.
Oh, yeah.
We were just dating.
Mm-hmm.
And I lived upstairs in an apartment. Bobby lived downstairs. And it was Valentine's Day 10 years ago. And I had told him that I never went to prom because my mom grounded me the day of prom. And I had this beautiful purple dress. And I was so excited. But I had apparently talked back. So I wasn't allowed to go to prom. And so anyways, then Bobby was like, okay, go get dressed up. And we're going to go out to dinner. And he came and picked me up at my door upstairs and went down to his apartment. And it was a full prom scene. Can you explain all the decor and everything that you did to prep for that night?
Well, we had all those like metallic letters like "Welcome to Prom." We took our prom photos. I think I put up a disco ball.
Yes.
Yeah, it was popping.
You like moved furniture, so we had a dance floor.
Yeah, of course.
You had
I got a corsage.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what kind of prom doesn't have a corsage?
You even like got a white tablecloth to put over your dining table,
Mhm.
so it looked like a high
Yeah.
school table.
Thanks, Costco.
And you made lamb chops.
Did I? I forget.
I think you made lamb chops.
Now we're really stretching my memory.
But that was the first time, and somewhere in the interweb you can find photos on that.
Yeah, it was fun.
That was the first time that I literally, and this is so cliche, but I got weak at the knees.
Wow.
Maybe you even got lucky.
My memory, I told you. Well, here we are again. Let's just stick with that. I think that's nice.
All right, podcast host.
Yeah, I
Bring it
gotta
home.
go set up another prom here.
How do you end your podcast?
What?
How do you end your podcast?
Oh, I almost forgot we were still on a podcast here. Great. Well, Tiki, my co-host, you have any additional questions? Sorry.
You just scared
Sorry.
her.
I love you, Tiki.
Love you too.
Tiki would be a good, cover.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, that's all for today. Have a lot more questions. Got totally sidetracked many times. Definitely my ADD kicked in a little bit, but I'm going to come back next time and we're just going to keep getting better like a fine wine.
That's right. And if you loved this podcast and found it insightful,
Boy.
then share it with your friends. Like it, comment, and make sure you subscribe. Thank you, Bobby. You've been a wonderful host on The Big Silence.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Till next time.
Till next time. Bobby out.
The Big Silence. The Big Silence.